As of January 2023, I've ridden nearly 100 different roller coasters, and in this video, I'll be talking you through my top 25. Subscribe if you enjoy. At number 25 is Skyscream at Holiday Park. Skyscream is a great ride for any thrill seeker. The queue line is literally a horror maze and actually has a few jump scares. I like the swing launches and the strong positive G-forces, but ultimately I have ridden better coasters. However, I appreciate what Holiday Park managed to achieve with this attraction. Number 24 is Python at the Efteling. Forget everything you know about old and janky Vekomas, because this roller coaster is smooth as butter. All the main elements of the ride got retracked a few years ago, and although I never rode the original, I can tell you that this roller coaster is fantastic. Sure, it may not have a ton of features that modern day roller coasters will have, but if you're looking for a smooth, forceful, and more traditional roller coaster experience, this is the ride for you. Taking the number 23 spot is Olympia Looping. Despite the expensive entry fee, Olympia Looping is the definition of a compact looping roller coaster. You go through a total of 5 loops and they're color coded to the Olympic rings, which is a really cool feature. The ride is very impressive for that reason, but the main draw for many people is the intensity. I believe you hit around 5 Gs, and if you're in the front or the back, you're definitely going to experience that force. Next up, we have a coaster that will surprise many people, and that coaster is Soar the Ride. Don't get me wrong, this coaster isn't the smoothest out there, but I really appreciate the intricate theming of this attraction. Although you can't see it here, there's a huge indoor section that really blew me away when I first rode it. Naturally, being themed to the Saw films, there's a lot you can do to terrify riders. I'm also a big fan of the Beyond vertical drop, but a word of advice, try and ride this coaster in the middle seats. There, you'll get more of a comfortable experience. Number 21 is Lost Gravity, a roller coaster with some of the wackiest elements I've ever experienced. From that insane first drop to the weird laterals, Lost Gravity is a spectacle. I enjoy the small pops of ejector airtime you get on this attraction, as well as the unique trains. The only thing stopping this coaster from being higher up on my list is the rattle. That rattle and the tight restraints took away from the ride experience. Another Mack Rides coaster is taking the 20th spot, and this is Bluefire. Bluefire has this awesome presence at Europa Park, with its massive vertical loop and beautiful track colour. This may be a bit controversial, but I actually enjoy the launch on Bluefire. It's got enough kick to get some enjoyment out of it, and there's a great near miss at the end of it with some rock work. All the inversions deliver, especially that final roll. I think it may be my favourite inversion out there. It's really good and the highlight of the ride for me. At number 19, we have the Wicker Man at Alton Towers, and this roller coaster has dropped significantly in my rankings. Don't get me wrong, the theming is phenomenal, and the overall ride experience isn't bad by any means, but I can't help but feel that this ride could have been better. Saying that, the first few elements deliver really well, and you can kinda tell that they were designed by none other than John Wardley. However, don't forget, Wicker Man is still comfortably in my top 25, so it's not going anywhere. Up next is Nemesis Inferno at Thorpe Park. As of the recording of this video, it's the only operating Nemesis in the country, and yes, I do think the name does take away from an otherwise great attraction. The ride is smooth, intense, and I love how close you get to the vegetation around the ride. The red track colour looks fantastic against the greenery. This is a must-do attraction at Thorpe Park, and I would highly recommend it. GCI have made some great roller coasters, and here's one that I think is really underrated. George and the Dragon is a dueling wooden coaster that has some great pacing and copious amounts of flow to airtime pops. And to top it all off, it's got a really good soundtrack. This is one of the first GCIs to be fitted with some of the new Titan track. It'll be interesting to see how the ride changes with the new modification. Number 16 is a ride that's going to turn a few heads, and this is Megaphobia. I've always spoken highly of this wooden roller coaster, and for good reason. There is so much space between the lap bar and your body, so you get tons of airtime, especially in that back row. The first drop is absolutely mental. You get flung out of your seat, and I just couldn't get enough of it. I don't think this ride will be everyone's cup of tea due to the rough nature of it, but the sustained airtime moments and laterals really impressed me. Entering the top 15, we have Oblivion at Alton Towers. Before this year, Oblivion wasn't even in my top 20, but this coaster has shown me that just because it's not the longest ride out there, that doesn't mean it can't pack a punch. For many of the general public, Oblivion is the scariest ride at Alton Towers, and I don't blame them. You're out of your seat for a sustained amount of time, before you then get smashed with positive G-forces as you hear the roar of the train in the tunnel. I'm a big fan of this coaster. The newest coaster on this list is Sick at Flamingo Land. It's amazing how much changing a roller coaster's restraints can have on your overall experience. If you think about all the bad things about Colossus, Sick fixes just about all of them. I understand that Flamingo Land didn't have the biggest budget, so I think they did a pretty good job when it came to stylizing this attraction. The station is done very well, being filled with smoke and lasers to produce this exciting atmosphere that really gets you pumped to ride. The only thing that bugs me is the rattle. It's a shame, but hopefully Flamingo Land can fix that issue in the future. Up next is Woden at Europa Park. This roller coaster is the complete package, providing a fast-paced, thrilling experience with a fantastic theme to go with it. The ride is themed to Norse mythology, and the whole queue line is beautifully decorated to suit that theme. The actual coaster feels like it could go on forever. The pacing doesn't let up throughout the entire layout. The airtime pops feel great, as well as the laterals. Woden is one roller coaster I cannot wait to ride again. Number 12 is Stealth at Thorpe Park, arguably the most iconic coaster at Thorpe Park. Just like Oblivion, this isn't the longest ride out there. Stealth will be one of the wildest 17 seconds of your life. You accelerate to over 80 miles an hour in less than 2 seconds, making it one of the fastest accelerating roller coasters in the world. That launch is incredible, and the following tower provides great views of the area, as well as providing some airtime. The last time I rode this coaster, I lapped this thing 7 times in a row, and on every ride, I was in awe. What a great attraction. Just barely missing out on the top 10 is Baron 1898 at the Efteling. If you only want pure thrills, then Baron won't be the ride for you. This roller coaster provides a complete experience, with multiple pre-shows, stunning theming, and a fun ride experience. I love the dedication that the Efteling put into making their attractions stand out in unique ways. And a great demonstration of that is this intricate lift structure. Naturally, the drop is the highlight of the overall ride, but it's nice to have a few more elements after it compared to Oblivion. So we've made it to the top 10, and number 10 is the Swarm at Thorpe Park. What is currently the best roller coaster in southern England, although that's yet to change. The Swarm provides an intense and exciting ride experience. I love how the theming interacts with the ride. You have a grounded helicopter, a real plane wing, and a billboard that you fly through. Very impressive. Sadly, the restraints let the coaster down a bit because they can become incredibly tight on your chest, but I now know that B&M have fixed that issue on later models. At number 9 is Troy at Toverland. This coaster is a longer, better version of Woden. However, the main feature of Troy that surprised me was how intense that first drop really is. You spiral downwards before going into this weird banking. I've heard from my friends in the Netherlands that the coaster has become a little rough recently, but I'm convinced that Toverland will get Troy back into full force. If you're a fan of wooden coasters, then you'll have a great time riding Troy. Number 8 is Goliath at Walibi Holland. Overshadowed by another great coaster at the park, Goliath still packs a punch and has one of the best starts and endings to any roller coaster I've ridden. You ascend the quick lift hill before being flown out of your seat by the first drop and the following airtime hill. Some would argue that from this point onwards, right up until the end, the ride is a bit boring, and I disagree. Sure, the long helices aren't the most exciting elements out there, but just because they're not the best doesn't mean they're bad. You get a fantastic sense of speed as you hug the ground and over the water. The twists also provide some good laterals, especially in the front row. However, to finish the ride, you have these 3 ejector airtime hills, and let me tell you, these are very good. Because of the small restraints, you feel completely exposed, allowing your entire body to experience some great airtime. Next up is Silver Star at Europa Park. My first, and at the moment only B&M Hyper, is full of floater airtime. Before riding this coaster, I'd never experienced airtime quite like this. and I was ecstatic about it. For quite a while this was my number one roller coaster, and whilst it no longer holds that title, I still admire it. During the winter, Europa Park runs Silverstar without any trims activated, and so my first few rides were out of this world. The highlight of the ride for me is the drop off the mid-course. This is borderline ejector airtime in the back row. Part of me wishes we had a B&M Hyper in the UK, just for that amazing flow to airtime, but nonetheless, Silverstar is definitely one of my favourite roller coasters. Another B&M at number 6, and this is Phoenix at Toverland. I have one word to describe this thing: insane. This has got to be one of the most beautiful roller coasters on earth, with extensive theming and now multiple attractions around this themed area called Avalon. The forces that I experienced on Phoenix blew my mind. You get some prolonged hang time over the wing over drop, before diving down and rising up into a sustained airtime hill over the water. However, the highlight of the coaster for me is what follows after the Immelman, and that's this helix. It completely bombards you with positive G-forces. Don't be surprised if you start to grey out on this part of the ride. I definitely did. Toverland made a fantastic investment with Phoenix. So now we're getting into the very best roller coasters I've ridden. This part of the list changes a lot, so don't get too mad at me, okay? At number 5, we have Icon at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Whilst it's no longer my favourite roller coaster in the UK at the moment, Icon still delivers a comfortable, re-rideable experience that features a lot of variety in its layout. You have hang time on the 0G roll, snappy transitions, airtime, positive G-forces, and a killer soundtrack to top it all off. If I had to ride any coaster all day, this would be the ride I'd choose. Especially now with Enzo. Basically Icon, but with spinning seats. Going through typical roller coaster elements while spinning is a really unique experience, and I'd highly recommend it to all enthusiasts, despite the high entry fee. Number 4 is the Smiler at Alton Towers. The world record holder for the most amount of inversions on a single roller coaster, and this thing is all kinds of crazy. Going through 14 inversions is no easy feat, and you go through these elements back to back pretty quickly. It's nice that there's a bit of a break halfway through the ride, otherwise the majority of people would probably throw up. The Smiler is a compact, intense roller coaster, which has 2 really good moments of airtime sprinkled in there. Plus, the ride has a really wacky and incredibly catchy theme tune, which can become very annoying in the queue line, but it adds to the demented theming of the coaster. At the moment, the Smiler is my most ridden roller coaster, and that's probably going to stay the same for 2023 because coming in at number 3 is Nemesis. Controversial, I know, but upon my last rides in 2022, I thought, flip, I haven't been riding this roller coaster enough, and I've been giving it way too much slack in the past. Yes, it was starting to show its age, and I think the retrack was the best thing for it, but that doesn't take away from the fact that this ride was incredible. The inversions, the theming, the roar, and the absolute intensity will forever impress me. Very few roller coasters that I've ridden have had the same impact that Nemesis has had on me. I cannot wait to ride it again in 2024. At number 2 is a roller coaster that I've wanted to ride ever since I became a roller coaster enthusiast. Expedition G-Force isn't your typical roller coaster experience. You start off with this amazing twisted first drop that is crazy in the back row. And again, just like Goliath at Walibi Holland, you have these very small restraints that leave you completely exposed to whatever madness happens next. The layout is full of ejector airtime and very strong positive G-forces at the bottom of each valley. I'd put this ride right up there with Nemesis and Phoenix in terms of intensity. I'm also a fan of the setting of this coaster, as you fly through the woods, dodging trees and just having a great sense of speed. Yeah, when people said that this was one of the best roller coasters in the world, they meant it. Definitely made the trip out to Germany worth it. But at number 1 is Untamed. Still my favourite roller coaster since 2020, and it deserves that spot. Untamed is a near perfect ride experience, at least for me. It combines my love of inversions with the craziness of ejector airtime. I mean, pretty much everything about this ride is great, but the final journey through the structure, going from small airtime pop to small airtime pop, will never not be amazing. And that's no diss on the first half of the ride. The drop is fantastic, as well as the first 2 inversions, because throughout the entire thing, you're out of your seat in this weird floaty experience. And it's interesting because that number 1 spot is going to be threatened in 2023. when I visit Sweden and Belgium. If you don't want to miss out, then consider subscribing. Thanks for watching and have a great day.